The delicate little flower. I went to your Omega workshop in July of 2009. I want to thank you for showing a great interest in my ongoing medical issues and for taking the time to guide me through a one-on-one regression therapy session. After the regression, it took me a few days to begin processing everything. I began to make connections specifically to the lifetime where I was just a small child in the field of yellow flowers, which were poisonous and which I mistakenly ate. My mother, the same one I have in this lifetime, killed herself upon my death, for she was so distraught that she hadn't been able to save me. She was overprotective in this lifetime, as we discussed, and soon I began to remember things that she had told me when I was growing up. I remembered that she had shared with me that after I was conceived, my parents decided to separate, unaware that my mother was pregnant. Once my mother discovered the pregnancy, the discussion began about terminating it. Her friends and family and my father tried to convince her that going through with it on her own would be a mistake. However, my mother responded that although she didn't know why, she knew she could never terminate the baby, and as hard as it was going to be for her on her own, she had to have it. She always told me that she had a strong feeling that she needed to bring me into this world. I also remembered that my mother had shared with me that she was extremely paranoid about me while I was in utero. She would often not feel me move for a period of time, which would send her straight to the doctor in fear that I was not alive. She was constantly afraid that I wasn't going to make it. In addition, I was often sick as a child, and many times this resulted in a hospital stay. Each time I was hospitalized, my mom worried that I wasn't going to live through it. After I was regressed, I realized that I was born into this life with my mother's preconceived notion that I needed to be taken care of, because of her fear that she was always going to lose me. Oddly enough, I recall that while I was growing up my mother used to call me, her delicate little flower, as I was so fragile and constantly getting sick. It was somewhat eerie when I remembered this, because you and I had just discovered that in another life I had actually died as a young child from an allergic reaction to eating little yellow flowers. I have not yet discussed all of my experience at Omega with my mom, but I plan to do so. As far as my eating, I am now up to 36 different foods. That's 25 more than I was able to eat before you regressed me. It is a slow process, but I couldn't be happier and I'm looking forward to being able to eat many more. I am still continuing to try new food, and I am having success after not being able to eat certain things for over 3 years. My body has been healing ever since that day. I also wanted to let you know that after the regression, many people approached me and told me that my regression had helped them. This made me think of your words when you said that we were all brought together for a purpose. Nikki Destio, we have lived before alongside many of the people with whom we live now. Our souls have reincarnated together. When a situation occurs that reminds us of a past life trauma, the seeds of our suffering are watered and our anxieties bloom. We fear what has already happened because we have forgotten the past. We mistakenly believe that the traumatic event will happen in the present or in the future. Whenever I encounter obsessively overprotective and controlling parents, my focus shifts to the past life causes. Overwhelmingly, the cure to their fears lies in those buried memories. The parents' worries are allayed, and the child, now liberated, can begin to prosper. The key to the future is often hidden in the past. At that workshop, Nikki recalled another tragic past life in which she died early. Amazingly, another woman who was attending and who had never met Nikki remembered the exact same lifetime. Her story is next. The world works in mysterious ways. Love, loss, and lifetimes. In July of 2009, I was fortunate enough to be able to attend your seminar. I knew that a whole weekend with you was going to be an exciting experience, and it exceeded my expectations by far. The last day was the most profound. In my regression, I felt a constant burning in my stomach and tightening in my chest. It was difficult to breathe. I saw a farmhouse in the distance as I walked over a fog-covered bridge. I was a young woman with beautiful features. I stood in the grass, away from the house, feeling great anxiety about entering it. The burning in my stomach and the tightness in my chest remained. And then I was taken to my last day of life. I was young, perhaps in my early 20s, wearing a crisp white dress, like a nightgown. I had long, dark hair. I was leaving someone whom I loved dearly and romantically. It was so sad, but somehow I knew that I had to leave him. Suddenly, as I left that life, I felt Vincent's presence. Vincent is a dear friend, a man whom I was just beginning to recognize as my soulmate. Later that day, a young woman named Nikki came onto the stage for a regression with you. How strange, I had thought. Vincent's daughter, with whom he is very close, is also named Nikki. As she sat on the stage with you, Nikki described a problem that she had had her entire life with swallowing and eating food. She had consulted many doctors about it, but none could find any physical reason for her problem. You regressed her to a past life in which she was a child. She was choking on a flower, and her mother had to try to pull it out of her throat. It was revealed that the flower was poisonous. The little girl had died as a result. The girl's mother, who happened to be Nikki's mother in this lifetime as well, committed suicide over her grief. Remember my burning stomach and tight chest, my inability to breathe well. I thought it was so odd that I had just felt those very feelings, and here Nikki was feeling them in a regression. But my mouth went dry as you regressed her to an even earlier time. I was beginning to fidget and to grip my journal. The woman next to me asked what was wrong. I asked her to read the description of the regression I had had earlier that day, which I had written down. Nikki was describing herself as a man. She was swinging happily in circles with a girl who wore a white dress and had long, dark hair. She loved this girl very much. As you moved her forward, she described the old farmhouse that I had seen in my regression. She stood, almost like I had, not wanting to go into the house. She was afraid something bad was happening in there. You finally coaxed her inside, and she described the girl as I had seen myself, lying on the bed, dying. She had been poisoned. Nikki felt the great loss of such love. Bed, dying. She had been poisoned. Nikki felt the great loss of such love. By the time Nikki's regression ended, I was crying, and the woman next to me had finished reading what I had written that morning. She said that I had to share this with you and Nikki, but I did not want to. Nikki had had such emotional memories, I did not want to tell her my experience. I had been such a skeptic of this whole thing, and I worried that others would find me an opportunist of some sort for seeking 5 minutes of your attention. Nonetheless, the woman asked for the microphone and promptly handed it to me. It's strange about Nikki, I started hesitantly. She described exactly the scene I observed when I saw the farm. Nikki was a man standing at the same faraway distance. He was upset because he was going to lose his wife. She was dying and he was devastated, so sad for the rest of his life. When I was dying in my regression this morning, I was so upset to be leaving my husband. I felt like we didn't have enough time, that something was unfinished. I felt a burning in my stomach and a tightening in my chest. My throat was so tight, it made it hard to breathe. I had a hard time relaying my regression to Nikki. I cried and, at times, choked on my words. Later, I sought her out in the crowd to introduce myself. I asked her if it would be okay to give her a hug, but she had a protective friend with her who immediately said that I could not, that Nikki had problems with hugging because it made her feel like she was choking or that she could not breathe. Nikki, however, gave me a big smile, and she hugged me tight for a good, long time. Shannon, in my recollection, Nikki's diet was extremely affected by her past life death from eating the little yellow flowers as a child. She could only eat 11 different foods and would have severe allergic reactions if she consumed anything else. It was nearly impossible for her to go to restaurants. Her life was limited and constricted by this problem. Within days after her regression, her diet expanded to 15 different foods, within a month, to 24, and then eventually to 36. It was not by chance or coincidence that Shannon, a complete stranger to Nikki, was in the same group that weekend. Such strong confirming memories, even physical symptoms, were shared. I am sure that Shannon is no longer a skeptic. Vincent, a soulmate whose daughter is also named Nikki, was also around, teaching about eternal love. We are not just our bodies or our brains, but expansive spiritual beings. Perhaps it was Vincent's higher self that was helping and orchestrating Shannon's experiences that weekend. Wouldn't a soulmate want to help open the mind and the heart of his skeptical loved one? Nikki's friend, not yet realizing that the regression to those two past lives had already begun the therapeutic process, was being protective. But Nikki, intuitively aware that she was healing and feeling better, overruled the friend and was able to happily hug Shannon. These two women were both learning about soulmates reconnected, about eternal bonds of love, about transcending death. The good, long hug expressed their mutual understanding and transformation. It does not happen very frequently that two people, often strangers, remember the same past lives. However, when it does, it provides even more validation that those lives were indeed real. They are not imagination or fantasy, not metaphor or symbol. Since we have lived hundreds or even thousands of lifetimes, it is not unrealistic to find that we have shared some of them together, just as we all share parts of this current one. In medicine, we have a saying, when you hear hoofbeats, don't look for zebras. This means that you should look for horses or, in other words, the most probable explanation, before considering a more exotic possibility. There are several ways to account for the occurrence of shared past life memories, but they are zebras. For example, the memories could be attributed to the collective unconscious, Carl Jung's concept that at some deeper level everybody knows everything, even if we have forgotten how to access that bank of infinite knowledge. The American psychic Edgar Cayce, as well as others, has written about the Akashic records, which is similar to the collective unconscious in that it is a knowledge of all things. But the most realistic explanation, the horse, is that these are simply actual past lives. The specificity of detail found in each regression and the healings that occur as a result lend additional support to this view. We are not limited to regressing to our own lifetimes, whether shared or individual. In the next story, Raymond found that he was able to visualize the past life of another person, someone whom he had not even known the week prior. Miracles happen when we set our minds free. Soulmate, this is a part of Zindagi Ki Roshni consultancy. It has been established for those who have lost someone and for those who are very sad in their life. About 100 PDF books and 20 short audio books of this topic will be sent to those who join it. This data will be sent to their email or WhatsApp. If you want to join this organization, then please send WhatsApp message to this number.